All right, so everybody, thank you for joining this session. It's a special webinar session to looking at the blue economy and talking about what works with some experienced practitioners. And to kick off, I'd like to introduce the head of the energy sector, Priyantha Wijayatunga, who will just do some opening remarks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Steve. Distinguished speakers, invitees, my colleagues from ADB, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this webinar on this important topic, securing a sustainable blue future for the Asia and the Pacific. Why ocean economy? Before the COVID-19 pandemic, the ocean economy was projected to reach $3 trillion by 2030. Asia and the Pacific lies at the heart of this economy, with East Asia serving as the conduit for 90% of the world's trade. 6 out of 10 of the world's largest fisheries are found in the region, supplying 60% of fish for global human consumption. Coastal and marine tourism supports millions of livelihoods across the region. In East Asia alone, it was valued at $200 billion a year. Our oceans hold the potential to provide the solutions to address increasing challenges in food supply, energy security, health, and environment. Tens of thousands of unique biochemical compounds isolated from sea creatures have led to life-saving therapies. An antiviral drug approved as treatment for COVID-19 by the US FDA was derived from sea sponges. A recent study found that marine bacteria in the frigid waters of the Canadian Arctic are capable of biodegrading oil and diesel fuel, which are, of course, difficult to manage. But to secure these opportunities and solutions, we need our oceans to remain healthy and productive. What does this mean? This means ocean transformation is a most urgent priority. Investments in ocean health, we call ocean investments, need to be scaled up. Unfortunately, in the last 10 years, only 13 billion, a mere fraction of what is needed, has gone into ocean investments worldwide through philanthropy and official development assistance. The figure is even less if you look at the private sector investments. In 2019, we launched a 5 billion action plan for healthy oceans and sustainable blue economies to boost investment and technical assistance to protect and restore oceans in Asia and the Pacific. We focus on 3 strategic priorities: coastal community and ecosystem resilience, marine plastic pollution, and innovative ocean finance and blue economies. I am pleased to share that we now have more than 50 ocean projects in ADB's current pipeline up to 2024. These include investments in sustainable coastal and marine fisheries in Cambodia, tourism and marine protection in the Philippines, nature-based coastal protection solutions in India and Pakistan, among a few others. But of course, we cannot do this alone. We joined forces with the European Investment Bank to form a new clean and sustainable ocean partnership to finance high-impact ocean investments, and will continue our work with worldwide fund for nature and the nature conservation. Geospatial tools, remote sensing, and artificial intelligence now provide a wealth of data. Governments and investors can use this data to make informed investment decisions. Our partnership with the European Space Agency will use satellite technology for surveillance of the massive exclusive economic zone of the island nation of Kiribati to help tackle illegal fishing. I am pleased to share that ADB has issued its first blue bonds worth a total of US dollars 300 million. These will grow investments in sustainable fisheries, reducing coastal pollution, accelerating a circular economy, and boosting marine renewable energy, green ports, and shipping projects. ADB is also developing insurance products to protect coral reefs in the Pacific. In Southeast Asia, innovating compensation systems on the Yangtze River in China and creating a platform to originate, accelerate, and fund small and medium enterprises and state enterprises to support the blue economies of Southeast Asia. In these efforts, technology and innovation will play a key role, as all of us know. Innovative tools and technologies can help leapfrog advances onto sustainable blue economy. Supporting innovation in technology, process, and management is a key focus for the Master EA team, whom we have working on this, aligns with work of the wider ADB Oceans Working Group. It will be great to see you at ADB's first Healthy Oceans Technology and Finance Forum planned for January 26th and 27th next year. I look forward to today's presentation and of course, wish to express my sincere thanks to all the distinguished speakers who would be contributing to this webinar. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Priyantha. It's my great pleasure now to introduce President James Michel, the past President of the Republic of the Seychelles. And President Michel will be sharing with us his experience working in government and specifically the work he did in setting up a blue economy function within his government. President Michel, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen who are watching this webinar today, it is a real pleasure to be with you and to share some of my experiences with the audience. Planet Earth, the blue planet as we know it, is so called because of its vast surface of water. So far, science is telling us that it is the only body in our solar system that can hold such vastness of water. While we have a general understanding of oceans, their dynamics acts, we are told that over 90% of the uncharted territories are yet to be solved and discovered by science. Delving literally and figuratively deeper into our oceans, but armed with the lessons of greed and ignorance of our green economy blueprints and mistakes, we should be able to chart our blue economy map with a much wiser and kinder approach. Basically, if gross mismanagement of our lands has brought us to a disastrous juncture, our retrace to stability and sustainability must lie across our oceans. Today, it is an honor for me to address you. It is with a sense of pride that I am able to share the blue economy story of the Seychelles. More so, it is with humility that I can say the Seychelles Blue Economy Strategic Plan was conceptualized, developed, and implemented during my presidency. More than a decade ago, when the world was focused on the green economy and the blue economy was for most a relatively alien subject, I decided that it was time for the Seychelles to venture into uncharted territories. Hence the beginning of our blue economy story. It was indeed little Seychelles that took the blue economy to the world. We, Seychellois, as all other islanders, are children of the ocean. Our landmass is one of the smallest in the world, yet Our massive economic space makes us one of the largest ocean states. Despite our almost negligible land resources, and because of our massive ocean treasures, I was convinced that the blue economy strategy was the way forward. That was why I delved into the idea and believed with conviction and passion that the blue economy was indeed the way forward. At the beginning, it was a very lonely journey. Moving outside the green economy box was a hard task. More so, selling it to the world in conferences, to my counterparts in many parts of the world, and even to some of my ministers in my own government. I was ridiculed by some, but I persevered. The blue economy was first recognized, acknowledged, and lauded at the Conference of Parties, the Rio+20 Summit in 2012. Nearly a decade has passed since then. In that time, there have been conferences, discussions, coffee meets, scientific papers, and workshops by the hundreds, by the thousands, all revolving around the blue economy. They had just one purpose. Sometimes they served only to increase the complexity of a strategy that was easy to fathom and a plan that was even easier to implement. Today, the writing is on the wall. It is clear that we can no longer afford to keep riding the conference carousel. As the development gurus and the scientific community unequivocally inform us, we have almost run out of time. Even small actions now, despite the possibility of them being suboptimal, are infinitely more important than perfect plans for tomorrow. Because if we do not act now, we will have no tomorrow. I propose in the next few minutes to outline what we must mandatorily do now and to give an idea of how we in the Seychelles unpacked the semantics, created the grammar, and converted the language of the blue economy into action. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our story. The term blue economy was coined by Belgian economist Gunther Pauli to define the innovation, entrepreneurship, sustainability, and philosophy in action. It is also a sitting definition which encourages better stewardship of our oceans and its blue resources. Since 2012, when we first revealed the idea, there have been many definitions for the blue economy. Each of these seem to have used a baseline language and nuanced it to suit the optics of those who formulated each definition. In lieu of muddying these waters any further, I will instead commence with the pillars upon which all definitions were subsequently built. These are the sustainable use of ocean resources, creating regenerative spaces for reproduction, the equitable sharing of economic benefits, and the reduction of the carbon footprint of maritime states. In that sense, the blue economy builds on the more familiar green economy, but with one very significant difference. While the green economy is a catch-up strategy that attempts to rectify past mistakes, bring damaged environments and resources back to life, and sustain their existence into the future, the blue economy is a conservation strategy that aims to stop mistakes from happening in the present and the future, prevent damage to comparatively well-maintained marine environments and resources, and enhance their sustainability in the present and in the future. In that context, instead of continuing with the primary mistake born of industrial age habit of focusing the greatest attention on the, we focused on balancing the harmonizing and the trinity of economy. That is the economy, society, and environment. Therefore, we recognize that a blue economy approach to sustainable use of ocean spaces and resources must be both ecologically regenerative and socially just, accounting for the needs of the current and future generations. We recognize that a blue economy approach includes all sectors of society in planning for ocean activities and balances the needs of different constituencies to equitably share in the benefits of the ocean, a global commons. We recognize that the blue economy approach factors ocean climate interactions, anticipates and plans for the effects of climate change and coastal marine resources, and conserves or regenerates these natural resources to increase resilience. Against the background created through the integration of the pillars of the blue economy with the three arenas of development, our actionables had to be evidence-led, regenerative, adaptive, inclusive, and sustainable. We are truly uncompromising in this. There could be no exceptions, for we knew from past experiences that it was that very slight lessening of oversight, that minuscule dropping of the guard, the negligible accommodation of personalities and agendas, and so massively complicates the response system, snowballed the negatives, and damaged the strategy to the extent that the exceptions became the rule, the assumptions became the norm, and the outcomes became undesirables. Let us be clear. Despite being relatively damage-free when comparing them with terrestrial equivalents, marine ecosystems are some of the most vulnerable on the planet and the most threatened by increased anthropogenic pressure. Yet, in a cosmic twist, those areas where the biodiversity is greatest are also the very same areas where people are most dependent upon the natural environment for their livelihood and survival, but where the capacity to sustain them are at the lowest. The Seychelles are no different in that respect. By 2012, having survived the 2008 global economic downfall and the IMF program, the country had a heavy debt burden to service. Therefore, the first order of the day was to steady the economy, but we had to do so without compromising the nation further through the models, the aid models that we have had in the past. We achieved this through a simple, innovative model. With its exclusive economic zone stretching across 1.3 million square kilometers against just 453 square kilometers of land, the Seychelles is a large oceanic state, and its waters, containing some of the most unique and extraordinary biodiversity in the world. Therefore, under an innovative economic reform program that I introduced during my tenure as president, I renegotiated the terms of repayment with the Paris Club creditors, through which our debt was bought by Nature Conservancy, which in turn made the money available to the Seychelles through its Seychelles Climate Change and Adaptation Trust in the form of a loan. The sustainable repayments in local currency of the government were channeled through that organization, that trust, which is called SECAT, back to the Nature Conservancy, and swap to restrict the country's national debt in exchange for ambitious marine conservation as part of a national marine spatial plan. Was a first of its kind and provided the government with the funds required to maintain, conserve, and protect its biodiversity hotspots and sustainable marine resource management and utilization activities and response to climate change. Seychelles committed to declaring a full protected areas, with 15% designated as no-take zone in its blue economy roadmap in 2015. In 2020, a full 10 years ahead of international target, we achieved it. We can say with a quiet pride that with this one innovative financial instrument, we restructured our national debt, stabilized the economy, and created the enablers to ensure a durable conservation program for our maritime and marine resources for decades to come. Faster than most of the nations, we arrived at home base and commenced the real work that stretched literally to the end of our blue horizons. The question that lay before us was to move quickly from the strategy and design phase and into the action phase, and to do so, we needed a strong, workable action framework that ticked all the baseline boxes with respect to the triple blue bottom line we had defined back in 2012. First, we had to know what resources we had, the state they were in, the level of their importance and usefulness in providing social benefits, and the dynamics of internal and external dependencies and impact their balance and harmony. We looked at many of these assets in as much detail as we possibly could, including those related to marine recreation, carbon sequestration, fossil fuels, wastewater, fisheries harvest, aesthetics, renewables, such as wind and wave energy, and minerals. We needed to do this through evidence-led mechanism, and it is a time-consuming and arduous task that can never really stop. Next, we needed to know the dangers and threats we face in our efforts to safeguard both marine and terrestrial resources, including such threats as exploitative resource destruction such as overfishing, illegal fishing, distant water fleets, destructive fishing methods, poaching, and others. Climate change and maritime pollution were also faced with the challenges of modern-day piracy from Somalia. We recognized that knowing the extent of these threats, their proximity and their destructive capability is critical to planning counter strategies and policies, as well as prioritizing activity areas, and therefore we expended significant effort to understand how these negative parameters play out, either through individual or complementary impact dynamics. Third, we understood that the entire effort had to come under a strong governance umbrella. We forged a strong governance based on a holistic approach that integrated both natural and social sciences. A department of the blue economy was created in the Ministry of Finance to oversee the governance process. Its main mandate was to oversee and implement the blue economy, strategic plan and of the country. Finally, we had to plan our blue economy to our own strengths. We had to plan our blue economy to overcome our weaknesses and neutralize the threats. The very of the natural world makes this a complex exercise that must be approached carefully, because everything is bound to everything else. We must understand that we cannot thwart nature nor ever completely map the play of the wind in the trees nor the sea on the sand. Yet some semblance of order must be present in our methods. And so we established our vision, projection, and activation in the style of us, in the uniqueness of us. We gave ownership to the blue economy blueprint to the people of Seychelles. It was a whole of nation effort owned by all. In that respect, we were one of the first in the world to take a proactive stance with respect to managing our marine spaces through a blue approach, to the blue economy approach. In 2018, as defined in 2015, the government approved our blue economy roadmap, setting out an integrated approach to ocean-based sustainable development and bringing together economy, environment, and society consistent with the Sustainable Development Goals, i.e. Target 11 of the Convention on Biological Diversity and the Paris Agreement, with the technical support of the World Bank and the Commonwealth. We stamped our idea of the blue economy with our uniquely Seychelles brand, leveraging our credentials and credibility as vanguard actors and flag carriers in marine spatial planning. The financial instruments related to the blue bonds and charting our course as an island with the vastness of the ocean surrounding us all the way to 2030. The social traction for the initiative, as well as the political will to execute it, that I created during the period 2007 to 2016, was such that there were no forces, either internal or external, that had either the desire or capacity to stop its forward march or even to slow its onward progress. That is why the Marine Spatial Plan is led by the government, and that is why there is strong credibility to the claim that the Seychelles is committed to the goals that support the long-term sustainable use of the exclusive economic zone. While it is the largest MSP in the Western Indian Ocean, it is also the first to explicitly address climate change. As an integrated multi-sector approach, it addresses climate change, adaptation, and marine protection, while supporting the blue economy and other national strategies. Although the MSP authority is the Ministry of Environment, Energy, and Climate Change, the government clearly recognized the need for interagency integration and coordination, and therefore created true cross-governmental bodies for the purpose. Of these, the first is the Department of the Blue Economy, and is tasked with providing the strategic direction and coordination of the blue economy implementation. The department is responsible for delivering the blue economy strategic policy framework and roadmap, charting the future 2018-2030. This focuses on 4 key priorities for action and investment, proposing objectives and strategic actions out to 2030. The department's role focuses on the development of the blue economy from the perspective of creating the right socio-economic enablers for sustainable economic growth, skill, innovation, resilience, and partnerships, rather than ocean management, which is carried out by relevant agencies with oversight from the Seychelles Ocean Authority, which is yet to be set up. While the mandate of the Seychelles Ocean Authority is still under review, it will certainly be looking at governing, monitoring, and evaluating marine spatial planning and its implementation by the agencies, providing information and expertise to support in matters of maritime governance, implementing scientific practices, including provide data requirements and an MSP research agenda, developing funding options to support the sustainable implementation of the MSP and public education, stakeholder communications, and outreach. The blue economy arrangements for Seychelles are designed to keep operational functions within individual government departments, whilst in tandem creating two oversight bodies to help with roadmap delivery, namely one for economic development and one for marine spatial planning implementation. It remains to be seen how these arrangements will work in practice, in particular in relation to accountability, governance, and operational delivery. Whilst there is currently no coordinated mechanism for marine science, there is a well-established means of monitoring human activity at sea, with a focus on illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. This is coordinated with neighboring Indian Ocean states through the Regional Center for Operational Coordination and the Regional Maritime Information Fusion Center, funding for marine science and conservation and blue economy enterprises. It is provided in part by the aforementioned trust fund, SECAT. Yet, all these strategies and plans may very well come to naught without the strongest possible oversight over an ambitious long-term effort. However, we are cognizant of the fact that state control and government oversight will not amount to all that much simply due to the vastness of the spaces. The complexity of intermeshes and logistics of surveillance. While the government should indeed be the driver of the monitoring process, we know that it can never ever be the exclusive watchdog. We learned that lesson clearly from exclusively state-based oversight of terrestrial environments and the comparatively low impact across the world. This is why we are cognizant of the fact that we must employ a whole-of-nation approach to monitoring the health of our ecologies and to achieve the goals of the blue economy. The people must be given ownership and become a part of the decision-making and implementation process through NGOs and other private sector organizations of a substantial part of the policing and sustainable development operations. Yet, while the oceans can be monitored from within, it does not exist alone, and all maritime activities that aim to coax the oceans back to health will fail if similar action does not take place on land as well. Those who work the land must be as aware of the ocean as careful to keep terrestrial anthropogenic activity from corrupting and polluting the seas. We must also recognize that digital transformation has made monitoring easier through the application of modern technology. I must also stress the critical importance that the private sector must play in creating the critical mass required to stabilize the blue economy and make it long-term and durable. Without its active intercession, much of that needs to be achieved may never see the light of day. I fully believe that business entities have understood the need to shift away from classic models and espouse more holistic ones. The private sector is also enabled by having access to funds, as well as the know-how and skills. Therefore, the blue economy is a perfect field in which they can prove this paradigm shift in thinking, because the blue economy is one that stresses the taking for what we should from the oceans and not what we can. It is in that sense a sustainable economy that carefully harnesses oceanic resources through mechanisms that ensure long-term economic development and social prosperity, while protecting and preserving the environment for posterity. Planned with care, the intervention of the private sector in the blue economy has massive potential to create employment, increase income, and stimulate growth, and above all, simultaneously restoring ocean growth through blue finance models, which can also be used to finance the management of marine protected areas. As a sector that is comparatively new to the world of business, it also affords near limitless opportunities for entrepreneurship, innovation, and invention that can be the leading wave that allows us to crest the crisis we face today on terrestrial counterparts. So far in these matters, the Seychelles has done the best it possibly can, despite sometimes debilitating challenges. There is still a great deal for us to do. The problems we face seem almost insurmountable at times, but we will always stand firm in our commitment to overcoming them. I hold up our work in the Seychelles as a model for small island developing states that may be used as template, considering the specificities of each seed. I consider our blue economy story as a spark that might eventually burst into a flame. I know the situation with many nations is not dissimilar to ours. This is why I believe firmly that we must trust each other and help each other as a matter of choice, not of convenience. That is why we must collectively acknowledge that blue is the new green. That is why we must work together to chart the uncharted. The ocean is not merely the last frontier, but it is very well our only future. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, President Michel, for your very kind words. We have a bit of an IT problem that I think because of the outage yesterday with some of the IT companies, we're unable to have the chat function operating. So if anybody has a question, could they raise their hand, and we can activate them and they can ask the President a question. So sorry for this, President Michel. Deborah Robinson, would you like to go ahead?
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, President Michel, for your leadership on marine protection. and sustainable blue economy, and also for your inspiring work. Could I ask you specifically for the island developing states, or in fact the large ocean states, which of the marine assets or of the blue economy do you see as most impactful for marine ecosystems and societal benefits, and also profitable in the immediate future? Thank you.
President Michel, you'll need to turn your microphone on.
Oh, I see. Could you mute the microphone? It's muted. Yeah. I'm sorry. Could I ask you to repeat the question, please? I'm sorry.
Yes, of course, no problem. For the SIDS, the island nations, which marine assets or sectors of the blue economy do you see as most impactful or profitable for investing in the near future?
I'm sorry, which sector I see?
Which sector or assets that would you prioritize investment in?
Oh, I see. I think there are many sectors that that can be very rewarding in investment. One is aquaculture, for example, because there is a need for more fish, more protein for the world, and the more fish we can produce, the more it will be consumed, of course. So I think there is a lot of success to be made in investing in aquaculture today. But of course, it has to be aquaculture that respects the environment. And today I know we have modern technologies that provides the facilities and technology for very clean aquaculture. And I think this is one area where we can invest in. And another area which is not necessarily concerned with the sea itself, but forms part of the blue economy, is energy. In places where there are possibilities of thermal energy or wave energy, I think this is a way forward, although the technology could be still a bit, not to the point that it could be viable in terms of cost. But wind energy is proving itself to be quite cheap and popular. And I think it is a way forward as a transition from fossil fuel to clean energy. And for example, in the Seychelles, I tried a little bit of everything. I tried wind energy from a gift from the UAE. We have some wind turbines which we use. We also have a solar farm, which again is part of the renewable energy program, and it works very well. Of course, with the limit of the land that we have, a small land surface, there is not much we could do in the provision of space for wind turbines. But there are technologies today where we can provide offshore wind turbines, which can provide a lot of electricity and make way for transition from fossil fuel. This again, I think, would be very useful for seeds. But let us not forget also something which may not bring returns immediately, but which eventually, when we create the condition for regeneration of resources, that is the protection of marine resources, we will generate more resources that can be used subsequently by the communities and even for the larger market. So investment in marine protected areas should also be seen as a venture, not only for NGOs to do, but also for the private sector in terms of, because finally it will bring about products and resources that will generate more revenue. Well, these are a few examples that I can give. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Michel.
Thanks, President Michel. Thanks, Deb, for your question. We have two other questions, but I think in the interest of time, we might go forward to Belinda's presentation. President Michel, if you can stay on the line, that would be great.
Sure.
What we'll do is we'll hand over to Belinda, and I think we'll turn all our cameras off and let Belinda have her go. Belinda, you ready to go?
I am. Thank you, Steve. I'd like to share a presentation with you, if I may.
Are you able to load that up?
Yes, so bear with me. I hope that my...
We're having some comms difficulties today across the board.
So, Steve, can you see my presentation yet?
I can, Belinda. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I greatly enjoyed listening to former President James Michel talk about the Seychelles experience, which has provided such inspiration for many practitioners in the blue economy. And one of my favourite quotes of James from his book, Rethinking the Oceans, is that one has first to overcome a common belief that the blue economy will simply be more of the same, more fishing, more shipping, more tourism. And certainly that was something we had in our minds when we at NLA International for World Oceans Day this year decided to produce a report which looks at the blue economy in practice. And I think we all feel that in essence, the blue economy is about the quality of marine and human life and of livelihoods. And in undertaking this report, we were curious to see what works in practice in the blue economy, where are governments starting their journey, and what are those key principles that are being exhibited in those practices. And we examined, looked at 70 different practices within the blue economy as part of this exercise, and we found that thought it would be helpful to guide future practitioners in the space, particularly in government, with some of the key steps that we could see that were underway to enable a blue economy, which is the critical role of government. And we thought we would therefore present the case studies in these 5 steps, 5 key steps that we identified, with more detailed activities underneath those, and that we would also look at the principles that were being exhibited. So what I'd like to do today, Steve, is briefly talk through some of the examples from our report within those 5 steps. And we felt that the natural place to start with the blue economy, and something that James Michel has talked about with respect to Seychelles, is understanding and mapping and measuring ocean wealth. Because by doing that first initial step of understanding what lies beneath the waves, what natural treasures may lie on your doorstep, that provides the essential context for a national blue economy. For example, what types of offshore renewable energy could best be harnessed for the given ocean and weather conditions? How can marine protected areas and an ecosystem approach to fisheries management maintain or increase the value of a nation's fisheries? Is regenerative aquaculture an option, and is it viable? and on what sort of scale can ecotourism opportunities be sustainably developed within the ocean sphere. A second advantage of starting with mapping and measuring ocean wealth is that it also provides this, as well as providing this essential context, it provides some further advantages, which I'll come on to. We found, interestingly, that many countries are in fact developing holistic ocean accounts, which build on environmental, economic and social data. There is a new, relatively new Global Ocean Accounts Partnership, which is an intergovernmental community of practice that is providing technical resources and community support to those governments that are interested in doing this. And this process builds on a system, the system of national accounts, by applying the SEA, which is a system of environmental economic accounting. And what this picture on the right hand shows, and this is from the Global Ocean Accounts Partnership resources, is that the economy sits within the ocean environment. The ocean provides the foundation of wealth to the blue economy, along with the human wealth that a country also has at its disposal. And what this depicts is that your environmental assets, the stock of renewable and non-renewable capital in the marine environment, your coral reefs, your mangroves, your kelp forests, your seagrass, your fisheries, and then stocks of minerals or hydrocarbons below the seabed. Those provide goods and services. They provide flows to the economy. And those flows can be attributed a financial value. They can be evaluated in terms of financial benefits. But there are also costs to maintain those assets in a good condition. And this is where the accounting for future generations really matters. This is not a purely paper exercise. This exercise is important because it's about how measuring how sustainable over time your ocean economy, your blue economy actually is. Of course, the economy also, as we know, provides flows back to the environment, and these are in the form of waste and emissions, unfortunately. There are some further advantages to mapping and measuring ocean wealth. The first of these is that it brings into view hidden values, hidden financial values, which can be really important for decision making. This example, and I'm sorry that the text of the diagram is very small, but in our report it's possible to zoom in and look more closely, is taken from a case study in Western Australia, the Geograph Marine Park. And environmental economic accounts were prepared for this marine park as part of the Australian government's pilot in ocean accounts. And what it shows is that an area of seagrass, 55,000 hectares of seagrass, is supporting multiple forms of benefit to the local economy. It's supporting commercial fishing, a recreational lobster catch, recreational angling, which is worth more than 2 million Australian dollars a year. It's supporting whale watching activities in the marine park. And of course, the seagrass is sequestering carbon, which now has a financial value on the carbon markets. So what this small example of one habitat in one small part of Australia's exclusive economic zone demonstrates is that significant and multiple value streams can be derived from nature. The second benefit of mapping and measuring ocean wealth is that it supports the investment case for nature, skills and sector infrastructure. And that's important to maintain and to increase marine ecosystem integrity, to keep those benefits flowing to us, and it's important to improve the health and livelihoods for local people and to foster local enterprise. We know that governments and development banks are starting to rethink what we mean by infrastructure investment as being broader than simply built infrastructure. And we know, for example, that investment in coastal ecosystems such as mangroves or coral reefs produces wider benefits beyond coastal protection, such as carbon storage and boosting fisheries, and that also these natural systems can grow over time as sea level rises, unlike built structures. Large ocean nations really need investment in capacity development and entrepreneurial skills, and we would suggest can work with development banks and others to identify which value chains can be built around the blue economy sectors that are most appropriate for a marine space, and that these should support a circular economy where waste is minimized, where wealth is created, and where value is shared. The second step that we observed and identified from our case studies is that understanding marine assets is really important, those natural assets, but then obviously those assets are under threat, as we know. And those threats are also compounding. So we have flows of pollution into the marine environment from land and at sea. We have degradation of coastal and marine ecosystems due to overfishing and destructive fishing. And we have climate change, which is causing acidification of the ocean and warming and reduced mixing of ocean layers. So an important step for governments is to prioritise risk areas when undertaking their blue economy planning. And this screenshot is taken from a free resource, the Allen Coral Atlas. We've heard earlier from Priyantha about the greater availability of free or very cheaply available satellite data to monitor the status of marine assets. And this shows an area of the Marshall Islands, and some of the features that can be seen are coral reefs, seagrass and microalgae, as well as macroalgae. And earlier this year, the Allen Coral Atlas launched a new feature, which is a near real-time coral bleaching alert. So now countries will be able to see much more quickly some of the threats to their reefs in near real time and be able to respond accordingly. The third step we identified, and which James Michel has talked about the importance of, is ocean governance. Governance is critical. As Priyantha has mentioned, ocean transformation is a priority. The ocean needs investment, and there is rising demand to invest in the ocean from the private sector. To attract this, it's critical that governments implement coherent long-term policies and incentives which regenerate and sustain natural assets and which benefit local people. And I think Seychelles is an excellent example of where having this long-term vision and robust governance mechanisms has led to significant inward investment into the country over the years. The Pacific Islands are home to the world's greatest tuna fishery, which generates over $500 million per year in value. And this picture here is from representatives of the Forum Fisheries Agency, which is an example of how strong regional governance mechanisms and evidence-led decision-making has harnessed the value of a major natural asset in the Pacific for local benefit. And this governance approach includes investment in high quality science, including ecosystem assessments, as well as fish stock assessments, and a commitment to collaboration of these countries through the parties to the Nauru Agreement. And as a result, the Western Central Pacific is the only world region where tuna is not currently overfished. So this regional governance model provides, I think, a very valuable example for large ocean states across the world's ocean, in the Indian Ocean and the Caribbean, but also for other regional fisheries management organisations. The fourth step we identified is countries are developing blue economy plans. And one of the cornerstones of planning is marine or maritime spatial planning, which James Michel has also discussed. And this is really a process of allocating human activities in marine areas across space and time to achieve and to balance ecological, economic and social goals. And MSP Global is a project of IOC, UNESCO and the European Commission, and there are many valuable resources available for governments now, available policy briefs on how to undertake marine spatial planning. But at its crux, as James has mentioned, it should be a whole nation approach. The idea, a core tenet of marine spatial planning, is that all stakeholders are actively engaged in shaping the blue economy of the nation. Here is an example of exactly this process underway in Samoa at the moment. 18 months ago, as the news item on the left reports, experts gathered in Samoa to map the country's special and unique marine areas. And now underway, 18 months later, is the community consultation effort as part of Samoa's marine spatial planning under the country's ocean strategy. Finally, and naturally, the Blue Economy Plan has to be implemented and without delay. As James Michel has also alluded to, we cannot let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Much of this work is very, very painstaking, but the important thing is that that action is taken. This example is from Fiji, which, like many countries, many large ocean states, has reefs which are facing compounding threats: climate change, overfishing, marine pollution and nutrient runoff. A recent project has been announced, supported by the Global Fund for Coral Reefs and a variety of local partners along with the government, which is aiming to bring into force 10 locally managed marine areas that will support ecotourism, to build a new sanitary landfill to upcycle 80% of solid waste, and to invest in a natural waste to fertilizer factory to replace the import of synthetic fertilizers. So this is a perfect example of collaboration across sectors, collaboration across the land-sea boundary, and a collaboration that is supported with blended finance. And it demonstrates how addressing these key risks to ocean assets, particularly the risks that are under local control, such as waste management and nutrient runoff, can be transformed into local employment opportunities and healthier reefs. The final example I wanted to share was from Palau, a trailblazing model and a prize-winning model of eco-conscious tourism. The Palau Pledge has now received more than 500,000 pledges to date. And this is a campaign that was launched in Palau, which requests visitors to Palau to pledge to the children of Palau to act responsibly and in environmentally conscious fashion. And the beauty of this initiative is that it really engages the many visitors to this large ocean nation to think about their environmental footprint to take responsibility for their action. And it's had an overwhelmingly positive response, with 96% of visitors reporting that it has changed their the way that they think about how they interact with the environment and the culture of Palau. My final slide is just to share with you the blue donut taken from the donut economics principle that we share in our report, which summarises the 5 steps I've just rapidly gone through, from measuring ocean wealth all the way through to actioning the Blue Economy Plan. But at the heart of those actions are some principles that we have seen are in evidence and which we suggest are critical guide rails to inform whether new or different blue economy activities are in tune with the original philosophy of this paradigm. So we see approaches that are regenerative in conserving and restoring the vitality of the ocean, that are adaptive to a changing climate, to new knowledge and new ways of working, that are inclusive genuinely of all stakeholders, particularly those who have long been engaged with the ocean and have depend upon it the most, which is sustainable ecologically, socially and environmental and economically, and of course, which is evidence-led based on a holistic range of broader measures. I'd like to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Belinda. That's wonderful. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Deborah, who runs the Ocean Working Group, and she's going to run a panel, and she'll invite back President Michel, your good self, and if Pragantha would like to join, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dee. And again, President Michel, Pragantha, and Belinda. Thank you, Belinda, for your very informative and insightful presentation. It was great to see many examples of economy in practice across the world and the So please participate on this webinar. Now we are moving to the panel part of the discussion. So I will ask, I will open the floor for questions to President Michel, Belinda, or Pragantha. So please do raise your hand. And if you could kindly introduce yourself before you ask your question, that would be much appreciated. So let me please pass to Ajit Raj. Over to you.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Thanks so much for this opportunity. Both presentations were really amazing, and I'm Ajit Raj. Currently, I'm from India. I'm working with fisher community from the Lakshadweep Islands, which is part of the Republic of India, which is a small group of atolls. Right now, I'm working as a researcher there, and we are trying to build a community-based fisheries management system. But I am also interested in looking and reading more about blue economy and related aspects. So I have 2 questions, if time permits. I can. My first question is to President Michel. The question is, often while we're talking about blue economy and related models, even blue financing and funding, most of the time we will be stressing more on small island developing states. As someone who is working in an island which is more dependent island on the bigger state, say for example, I'm this place called Lakshadweep, which is closer to the island, the SIDS Maldives. Although they share similar kind of vulnerabilities, similar kind of ecosystem and social and cultural aspects, a lot of the time these islands, which are actually part of big nations, are not seems to get a lot of importance in funding or in blue economy funding or related or I couldn't find a like a international global coordinated body to collaborate together and come up with like similar challenges that these islands are facing. So I just want to ask that do we have any initiative right now to take that forward, extending this framework from SIDS to further, so that we can include islands which are also part of big nations under this sustainable blue economy framework. Am I clear? Sorry,
Okay, thank you very much for your question. It's a bit of a complicated one. You form part of a country, a larger country, and you are actually dependent on the policies. You are dependent on the programs of that country, and you cannot belong to another country. So any programs, any activities that would benefit islands, benefit other islands, would also have to fall under the ambit of the country to which you belong. So I think what can be done there is for your country to come up with policies and programs that would enable you to benefit as small islands, like other island states also, so that you can be a part of the whole process. But eventually, it comes down to the country to which you are part. So that's the only advice I can give. Otherwise, the only other way is for, if you have organizations which can link up with other NGOs which can help you as an organization, and of course depending on the policies of your country, this could be another way to be able to access some form of assistance to realize your projects.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, President Michel. Could I ask a similar question to Belinda? From your vast research on blue economy across the region and around the globe, do you have any examples on this to share with Ajith, where perhaps the blue economy framework and drive for development of the sustainable blue economy isn't coming from the national level, but is being applied perhaps in a smaller context, being driven from the bottom up by communities or a local government or organization? If you have any examples, that would be helpful. Maybe it's I know spatial planning is applied in that way across the region, but the broader blue economy frameworks, have you seen that being applied at a different scale?
So in our report, Deborah, we really focused on what governments were undertaking. So we're looking at that whole national picture. And actually, Ajith, in our report, it's worth you looking at the UK's example, where, I mean, the UK has an established ocean economy that it's now needing to make more blue. But it has one of our co-authors, Dick and Howell, provided a very interesting case study for the UK, where there is a broad UK vision and there are UK structures, but then within the UK, authority is delegated to England, to Wales, to Scotland, and to Ireland. So regional differences to manage these spaces are acknowledged and delegated. So to answer your question, Deborah, I'm aware of lots of blue economy type activities that NGOs and others are undertaking in the marine environment, in the coastal zones, on marine protected areas across the globe. But at the end of the day, the governments are critical in this because it's their sea space. Only they can determine the fate of governance of the high seas, which is 2/3 of our planet. And so it does all come back to government for me, and their actions are pivotal, I think, in determining how quickly we realise the success of the blue economy. And of course, development banks can greatly support in that through not just financing, innovative financing, but being supportive and encouragement of policy coherence.
Thank you very much, Belinda. So another example is in New Zealand, we don't yet have a national oceans plan or blue economy framework. We do have a New Zealand coastal policy statement, which was world leading at the time. I think it was 1992. It was launched. And our national government delegates the responsibility for it's not exactly blue economy development planning, but more coastal zone regional planning, marine spatial planning to each of the regional authorities. But again, that is only for the coastal zone extending out to the edge of the territorial sea. So not the full EEZ and certainly not the high seas. So yes, very interesting question, Ajith, and thank you for your responses, President Michel and Belinda. I think yes, for there is really the key role there for national governments in creating these holistic and integrated frameworks that cross administrative boundaries and sectors. Can I now turn to Ellen Paul, who has her hand up? Thank you. Steve, is Ellen unmuted?
She should be unmuted, Deb. Let me just... No, she should be talking. Go ahead, Ellen.
Thank you, Ellen.
Yes. Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you for those very informative presentations. A question for the panel would be on, do you feel that, larger nations, I mean, as compared to atoll nations, have a more advantage position in terms of moving towards a more blue economy?
Thank you, Ellen. Who would like to take that one first? Can I turn to you, Belinda?
Yes, sure. I mean, I'm not sure they do have an advantage. I think each blue economy is unique. It depends on the sea space and those natural assets below the water. It depends on the people. Those are the factors that combine to make a blue economy. I actually think the large oceanic states are probably the greatest innovators in the blue economy. Seychelles is a perfect example, and often driven by need because they face unique challenges and they are at the front line of these emergencies. So I think they have many valuable lessons that they can share with each other, as well as with developed countries. I think it's often harder for big countries like India and others to navigate the complexity in a way that keeps progress going. As we've heard, there's marine spatial planning is painstaking. It's detailed. but progress has to be made, and the governance is really important to get right, I think, and proportionate.
Thank you, Belinda.
Thank you. Deborah, can I ask another follow-up question?
Yes, please do, Alan.
Yeah. Apologies, I know there's others that would like to take part. Just real quick, because when we were talking about, the planning, the cohesiveness of the framework, the RMI has a really good process that is very community driven to engage all the, all the various stakeholders, and more importantly, all the community grassroots. So, they called it the Remanlak framework. And but for me personally, what I'm finding though is the Remanlak framework is more about the marine sector. But then when we start going into MARES and the concept of having a multidisciplinary sector approach to do the value add, in my view, I feel like the country has not quite gone there in terms of integrating its own planning and framework tools to ensure that there is cohesiveness between the marine sector, the energy sector, transport, and all these sectors that would have the synergies. So I think they often are operating in silos. So could you share some best practices of what's been done in other countries to kind of marry these all these sectors so that there is that cohesive forward-looking framework?
Thank you, Alan. President Michel, would you like to respond on that question, perhaps from the Seychelles experience?
Okay. Thank you, Anima. I think cohesiveness is very important there. It is a key, whether it is a small country or a large country. Bearing in mind the extent of the space, the land space and the sea space, and in terms of small island states, of course, the preoccupation would be how to develop a cohesive plan for the vast maritime space. And for a bigger country, it would be not only the maritime space, but also the land space. So, but it has to be cohesive, because whatever you do on land, one way or another, has an impact on the sea. It impacts in different ways, in pollution, in different activities, and what you do regarding sea activities and sea development will also have an impact on land, because it impacts on activities that you'll be required to do on land to ensure that you have developing and environmentally friendly impact on your city development. So the blue economy is also a reflection of your development of the blue economy is also a reflection of your land development, because one impacts on the other. So cohesiveness is very important to ensure that your plan, your national development plan, encompasses activities, programs, policies that covers both, because after all, it's all your communities, whether they are coastal communities or inland communities, they are all dependent on one another. But of course, the coastal inhabitants and livelihoods are more dependent on resources from the sea. But I think a holistic planning is the answer for every country, whether big or small. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. For the Seychelles, in the development of the economy, I know that you are establishing a national actions body, but in the earlier phases, how did you facilitate the integration Was it through establishing a national working group or a task force that to help that coordination?
It was to get everybody on board within government itself. As I said earlier, even within the government, some of my ministers were quite a bit skeptical about the blue economy. But finally, we came down. Of course, we couldn't do it on ourselves. We needed to have technical expertise from various bodies like the Commonwealth, the World Bank to help us bring forward policies that helped us to work out the various projects, because it is something that encompasses everything in every ministry. This is why I felt it was important from the beginning to set up a body which eventually became a department of blue economy to coordinate the various activities at different levels and also in different government ministries and departments to ensure that we all follow the same lines. And of course, eventually it developed into something bigger as we involved the Nature Conservancy, as we involved other stakeholders to come in and help us with a plan. And that plan, of course, is the Marine Spatial Plan, which embodies all your strategies, your development strategies for your entire EEZ, including the spaces that you would need to protect at different levels, areas where you could exploit at different levels, again, depending on the resources that you have and the sustainability framework. So it's something that we built up over the years, and now I think we have a plan that is coherent and is more or less holistic. But of course, nothing is perfect. We need to continue to develop it and make it better as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's great, I think, for all of us on the call to learn from the experience that you have and your insights. So thank you. We are at time, so please, any participants on the call, if you have to drop off, please do, and we thank you very much for joining. But if it's okay, I would like to ask, I have two more questions. So first, let me turn to Abukun Adewumi. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deborah, and very much thanks to President Michel and Belinda for the wonderful presentation. And also, Belinda, thank you for mentioning the Global Ocean Account Partnership. I'm Ibukun Adewumi, and I work for the Global Ocean Account Partnership in Sydney. One thing that is important is this is a framework, particularly in measuring ocean wealth. And there are a number of frameworks that are designed to to fulfill this purpose. But as one of my colleagues would say, that frameworks are like toothbrushes. Everyone needs a toothbrush, but no one would want to use another person's one. So since we have this number of frameworks, and it seems that if we continue on this trajectory, we might be working in silos. Though some of these frameworks are contextual and some of them are global that can be adapted to different contexts. But I believe that synergies between this framework would serve a better purpose of helping us to have holistic management, holistic understanding, and collective ideas about the blue economy. So my question is that how do we synergize between these frameworks so that we don't work in silos and we are all in line, in tune with what sustainable blue economy should be about, or sustainable ocean economy? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abukan, for the great question. Perhaps Belinda, would you like to respond?
I'll try. Thank you, Ibukan, and great to have you on the call. And this, I guess, the blue economy is a continual journey, isn't it? And what I like about the Global Ocean Accounts Partnership and their work is that they are helping countries think about the values that matter for the blue economy. What values have not been brought into decision makers' radar that need to come into consideration? What is the value of the services of nature? And although some of us might not like the idea of financially valuing nature, we know that the fact that it's been an externality has led to all the problems we now face. So we need to change. I think the most important point about trying to create ocean accounts is getting to know your blue space and getting to know the people who have not been included in your national statistics. Small-scale fishers activities are routinely not part of national reporting, and so government decision makers don't realise their critical dependency on ocean assets. So it's about bringing the emissions into view more than anything. And I think every country will do this differently, will have different priority sectors. But the mere act of doing this, starting to measuring, which is in itself a very elaborate process and involves many particular experts, is value because it helps shift mindsets, and it highlights where you really need to focus, because you don't need to measure everything, and action, as James Michel has said, is the most important thing here. We can't let the perfect hold us up, but it helps spotlight where we really need to focus. Is it a particular area of the EEZ where we need to be very careful about how we plan use of that area because there are unique natural assets? And who are the people who have been left out, who need to have infrastructure developments around them to support their activities to get greater value domestically? So I'm not sure we'll ever harmonise all the frameworks, but the act of doing it is really important, and it's great that you're involved in that.
Thank you very much, Abukan, for the great question, and thank you, Belinda. So perhaps a final question, and it's one that has come through the chat from Andy Hamflet from NLA. Thank you to President Michel for a crystal clear strategic overview that provides a brilliant framework for thinking. So thinking about how you got here, I'm assuming not everyone was fully on board when you set off on the journey. Can you share some thoughts on how you persuaded any stakeholders who may have needed persuading? What arguments did you use to get them to come around to your way of thinking? And which of these tactical victories do you look back on with the greatest pride?
Thank you. It is a very interesting question. I have to go down memory lane, yes. I think that everybody knew about the possibility and the importance of a blue economy, but perhaps not everybody saw how important it was for us to put a framework together to ensure that we can harness all the possibilities together to make it something that really can represent our future. So I think it was a question of trying to present a picture of how things can be if we do it this way. And I think this helped in the Seychelles, for example, for me to put across the message and to make it accepted. And then afterwards, I had to take it to the stakeholders, to the fishermen, to take it to the tourism organizations, to take it to other organizations involved with activities on the sea or on the shore. Then it was possible also to see the advantage of doing it in a certain way, of having a development in a certain way that could fall within the framework of the blue economy. But for it to be successful, I had to take it further than Seychelles, because we could not do it alone. It had to be something that would be affected by should be accepted by the wider world. And I remember the gentleman asked me about some anecdotes, for example, or some situations whereby it was more difficult, or what was some incidents that I can remember. Taking the concept to one of the conferences that was held in Southern Africa. I think it was a SADC conference. And when I presented the concept there, of course, not all, some of my colleagues, understood it. But there was a case whereby I was looked at with some sort of apprehension. What is he talking about? The ocean is very far. This is some of the perspective of people who are living far inland, not seeing the ocean as so important and being part of not one country or one island state, but part of the whole framework of a continent. And then it was not easy also to get it accepted on the agenda of the AU. And finally, when this was achieved, it was accepted as part of the commitment of the AU framework to be adopted and implemented by the organization. It was a victory for us, because then the whole continent has accepted the concept. And of course, talking about it and taking it to UN conferences was another way to get other seeds, other members of the AOCs to come in together and fight for not only the blue economy, because it involved also our existential problem, which is climate change. So all these put together brought us together to have a stronger voice, to get the whole world to understand and appreciate the plight of small island states, which finally now it has been accepted that the blue economy and climate change and all the other aspects linked to the oceans, climate change, is not only a matter for small island states, but it's a matter for the whole world, for the planet, which I hope at the next COP meeting, COP26 in Glasgow, we will see a turning point of the way things have been going, and where sanity will prevail over insanity. And we can look forward to a time when humanity itself will work towards a safer world with taking actions that will be able to save the planet and life on the planet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, for again sharing with us your inspiring journey, and also your message of hope for the future. And Belinda for sharing with us a roadmap and examples of the steps that we can take to get there, and have these healthy and wealthy oceans and sustainable blue economy. So thank you again. With that, I will thank you both, and also our audience for the engaging panel discussion, and pass back to you, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you, Belinda, and thank you, President Michel. What a great end to the webinar, and a few great takeaways. Probably the most humorous was the toothbrush analogy from Ibukun, which I quite liked. But I think the line that I most took away is that sanity prevails over insanity, is the line that we should take away from this. And I wish you all the best of luck in your activities, everyone on the call. And once again, I thank President Michel for taking time and being kind enough to share his time with us. So on that, merci beaucoup, Monsieur Président. Vous êtes très gentil, and best of luck. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Belinda.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Pleasure.
Bye, folks.